The floor of the Loomis-Fargo vault looked like a beach made of money. Mountains of cash, heat from the counting machines, and a dull hum from the big metal door. It was October 4, 1997, a Saturday night in Charlotte, North Carolina, and David Ghantt, the quiet vault supervisor with a mustache and a tired look, was standing in front of more than $17 million. He pulled the key that only he had, turned it, and heard the heavy clunk. Then he did the unthinkable. He bent, grabbed 2 bricks of bills and fed them into a rolling cart. A camera overhead blinked its little red light. David looked straight up at it for a half-second like he was checking a clock and then kept going. In the parking lot, a white van waited with the side door open. He pushed the first cart out, sweat soaking the back of his shirt. More cash. More bricks. More carts. It felt easy, too easy, until the van sagged under the weight and the engine coughed again and died. David froze. The vault timer ticked behind him. The camera was still blinking. He slammed the van door, tried the key, and the engine finally caught. Headlights off. He rolled into the dark. Inside the building, the vault door swung the last inch and locked. And right then, with millions in the back and fear in his throat, David knew the truth. This was not a perfect crime. It was the unperfect crime, loud and messy and full of mistakes. But the biggest mistake was not the van. It was the people he was doing this for. How did he get here? It started months before with small talk in the break room and a smile that made him believe he was special. Kelly Campbell, a former co-worker with a sweet, easy voice, had left Loomis-Fargo but still chatted with David. She told him he worked too hard for too little. She told him he deserved more. She said she knew a guy who could help them start a new life, fast. The guy was Steve Chambers, a smooth talker from the rough edges of town, the kind of man who'd shake your hand and keep his other hand behind his back. Steve heard vault key and saw dollar signs. He told Kelly to keep David close. Make him feel seen, Steve said. Make him feel like a hero. David was not a movie villain. He was a man who worked long shifts, ate dinner alone, and felt invisible. When Kelly called, he felt like someone finally noticed him. She said, "What if we took some of that cash and changed our lives?" She said, "You could be the one to do it." She promised they would go away together. She promised they wouldn't get greedy. She promised Steve would handle the hard stuff. David believed her because he wanted to. That was mistake number 1. The plan sounded simple because simple plans make people brave. On the chosen night, David would close up, load cash into a Loomis van, and meet Steve's crew at a storage unit on the edge of Charlotte. Then David would drive south, cross the border, and wait in Mexico while Steve laundered the money. Kelly would join David later, and they would live on the beach with the soft sound of waves and no alarms. "A few months tops," Steve said. "We'll send you cash in small bites. Stay quiet. Don't use your real name." Everyone nodded. Nobody asked what a few months of waiting would feel like when the FBI started knocking. That was mistake number 2. Back to the night of the heist. The van rattled along the dark roads, heavy like a boat full of wet sand. David's hands shook on the wheel. He whispered, "Easy. Easy." He was supposed to stay cool until he reached the storage unit. At a stoplight, he glanced at the rearview mirror and saw only black. But he could feel the money back there like a thundercloud pressing down. He turned into the storage place, rows of metal doors like sleeping mouths, and saw Steve's men. One wore a baseball cap too low. Another wore gloves even though it wasn't cold. They slid the door up and the smell of dust and oil rushed out. The men cheered when they saw all the cash. "We did it," one said. "We really did it." They started moving bricks of money from the van to the unit, stacking them like firewood. A radio played low. Someone laughed. It felt bright, noisy, and wrong. Steve wasn't there yet, but his wife, Michelle, was, sharp eyes, fast hands, a notebook ready. She counted and wrote. "Keep the wrappers," she said. "We need to know the totals." They didn't know that the wrappers and the straps could be traced. They didn't know that the camera at Loomis was still recording and that their timing meant their faces would be easy to match. They were thinking about how many cars you can buy with $1 million. That was mistake number 3. When Steve finally showed up, he held a big grin and a bigger plan. "Nobody spend anything," he said. "Not yet. We keep it quiet." He looked at David. "Get to Mexico. We'll call you on a payphone in Cozumel. Wait for my word." David nodded and left with a small bag, a fake name, and a heart stuck between hope and fear. He drove all night, then flew south with hands that would not stop sweating. He told himself that he had crossed a line but that he did it for love. He saw Kelly's smile in his mind. He believed she would meet him soon. That was mistake number 4. Back in Charlotte, quiet lasted about 5 minutes. The very next week, Steve and Michelle started spending. Not a little. A lot. They paid cash for a big brick house with white columns. They bought a fancy car that made neighbors stop and stare. They paid off a credit card with bundles bound by Loomis straps. They started handing money to friends and family, asking them to hold this, promising a cut if they kept quiet. People can keep secrets, but money makes them talk, and this money was loud. It smelled like the vault. It left green dust on fingers. It came with rubber bands and bank labels. That was mistake number 5. The FBI got the call soon after Loomis discovered the missing cash. Agents walked into the vault and saw camera tapes lined up like dominoes. They played the footage. There was David's face, clear as day, looking right at the blinking red light. There was the van rolling away. Agents drove to houses, knocked on doors, and asked simple questions with friendly voices. Did you notice anything strange? Anyone spending more than usual? In one neighborhood, they saw a new swimming pool being dug in October. In another, they saw a new car with no plates. They listened. They took notes. They smiled. They left. Then they came back with warrants. Meanwhile, David tried to be a ghost in Mexico. He stayed in a cheap hotel with a fan that clicked and a window that looked at the sea. He ate tacos and watched tourists. He waited for Kelly. She called sometimes, her voice thin on the line. Soon, she said. I promise. He asked about Steve. She said, he's got it all under control. But David could hear noise in the background on those calls. Music, laughter, clinking glasses. It didn't sound like hiding. It sounded like a party. And parties end. As weeks turned into months, Steve sent David money but less than promised. He said the rest was tied up. He said not to worry. He said keep waiting. But Steve had a new worry. David knew too much, and David was getting lonely. Lonely people make calls. Lonely people come home. Steve told a friend that problems should be handled. That friend knew a guy who knew a guy. One day in the hot Mexican afternoon, David sat on a stone wall by the water, the sun bright and the air thick with salt. A scooter rolled to a stop. A man in sunglasses stepped off, smiling too wide. He reached into his bag as if to pull out a postcard or a phone and that was when everything went from dumb luck to real danger. The man in sunglasses froze when David stood up. For a long second, neither moved. The ocean roared behind them, the smell of salt and diesel filling the air. David's mind raced, the bag, the smile, the way the man's hand lingered near it. His gut screamed run. So he did. He turned, pushed through a small crowd, and ducked into the narrow streets of Cozumel's old town. His flip-flops slapped the pavement. He didn't look back until he reached his motel. The man was gone. David locked the door, heart hammering, and looked out the dusty window. The street was quiet. Too quiet. He sat on the bed and stared at the ceiling fan spinning lazy circles. They're trying to kill me, he whispered. He knew it now. Steve didn't want him back. He wanted him gone. The money was never meant to be shared. Back in North Carolina, Steve and Michelle's low profile had become a running joke. The new house had marble floors, a jacuzzi, and a gold-trimmed mailbox. Steve started throwing barbecues with steaks, beer, and jokes about easy money. He handed out bundles of cash to friends who kept asking, "Where'd you get all this?" and replied, "Don't ask questions." Michelle, meanwhile, was buying diamonds, fake nails, and luxury clothes that screamed, "Look at me." She told people they had hit it big with investments. Nobody believed that. The FBI didn't need much more. Agents traced the money serial numbers. They all led back to Loomis-Fargo. And the biggest clue came from something so small it almost seemed silly. Michelle's friend tried to deposit $50,000 in cash at a local bank. When the teller asked for ID, she panicked and left. The teller reported it. Within days, the FBI had a list of everyone connected to Steve and Michelle Chambers. Agents put their house under surveillance. From a parked car across the street, they watched the couple come and go. New outfits, new cars, even a tanning bed delivered right to the house. The agents called them the worst hiders in America. One even joked, if they bought a neon sign saying "We did it," it wouldn't be more obvious. Meanwhile, Kelly Campbell, the woman whose smile had started it all, was feeling the heat. She was supposed to be the go-between, talking to David, relaying Steve's plans. But now she was scared. Every night she checked the news, waiting for her name to appear. She knew the FBI was circling. She called Steve, her voice shaking. "We're going to get caught," she said. "You said it would be clean." Steve laughed. "Relax. Nobody's linking us. Just keep quiet." But Steve was wrong. The FBI was already closing in. They found receipts for the cash house payment. They found neighbors who said they moved in with boxes of money. They found people who said He bragged about a heist. They found everything, except David. David was still in Mexico, broke, scared, and finally realizing he'd been played. He tried calling Kelly again, but she didn't answer. So he called someone else, an old friend at Loomis. He said, "Tell the FBI I'm ready to talk. I just want to come home alive." That call was the final piece the agents needed. A week later, David walked into an airport in Playa del Carmen, wearing sunglasses and a fake name, and boarded a flight to the United States. The moment he landed in Atlanta, two men in dark suits approached him. "David Ghantt," one said. David sighed. "Yeah, it's me." He didn't fight. He didn't run. He just said, "I'll tell you everything." When the news broke, it sounded almost like a comedy. Armored car driver steals $17 million and gets betrayed by friends, the headlines read. Reporters called it the dumbest heist in American history. During interrogation, David spilled the truth, the plan, the money, the names. He told them about Steve and Michelle's spending spree, about Kelly's role, and about how Steve had sent a man to kill him. The FBI already had evidence. Now they had a confession. Within days, agents stormed Steve's big new house in Gastonia. They kicked the door in and found Michelle on the couch watching TV. "Where's Steve?" an agent asked. She pointed upstairs. Steve was in the shower. He stepped out wrapped in a towel and said, "Took you long enough." Agents found $2.3 million in cash stuffed in barrels, bags, and under floorboards. They found receipts for new cars, jewelry, and even a tanning bed. They found photos of the couple smiling next to their new house, with stacks of money in the background. In court, the story played out like a movie no one could believe was real. David faced his sentence quietly, admitting everything. Kelly cried when her name was called. Steve smirked through most of it, acting like he was still in control. Michelle told the judge she just wanted a better life. The judge shook his head. "You could have had a better life without stealing $17 million, he said. David was sentenced to over 7 years in prison. Kelly got a little over 5. Steve and Michelle each got more than 11. The money wasn't even all found, over $2 million disappeared forever. Years later, David would say he learned 2 things. Never trust the smile that comes with a secret, and never think you can outsmart the FBI with a U-Haul full of cash. But the story didn't end there. Because what happened next, after the trial, after the jail gates closed, after the cameras went away, showed that the unperfect crime had one last, unbelievable twist waiting to surface.